Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast. I'm Hitzer.
I'm Isa.
Continuing on from our best of series, last episode we talked about our favorite TV series or just series in general, that is appearing on screens of all sizes.
Hmm.
As we discussed, it's hard to differentiate between television and film these days, but whatever, it's a series. But this one is a bit easier to differentiate. We're talking about the best films of 2020. Now,
Yep.
keep in mind, these three films that we'll be talking about are some of our favorite films of
Yep.
2020, but there are a couple of caveats.
Mm.
Number one is that these films aren't necessarily the top three best films of 2020.
Yep.
The reason for that is we had discussed some of the best 2020 movies already. We had talked about Waves, we talked about Little Women.
Hmm.
My actual number one, spoiler alert, is Nomadland,
Yep.
which I watched at SGIFF. The thing is, Nomadland is only available at festivals right now, so there was no way for me to let Isa Fong watch this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess we could cover it as and when the release becomes wider.
Mm.
Yeah. But
So yeah, probably next year lah.
yeah, probably next year. We owe you guys one, and yeah, we'll definitely cover that. Yeah. So, are you done with all of your top lists of the year for writing wise?
I have done my top 50 TV shows. The draft is pretty much complete. I formatted it, everything. So I've nailed down the rankings of the top 50 TV
Okay.
shows.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
films, I'm gonna hold off a bit until Soul comes out.
Right. So that's what you're waiting for, really? For
Uh,
just as in just Soul is the only one you're holding out.
Soul to me has the potential to get into the top 20 or top 10 lah, to be honest, because
Yep.
it's Pixar, it looks really good.
Yep.
So I don't want to like format everything and then have to like reschedule and then renumber and then like adjust the thing. So I'm just gonna wait to rank uh, to the 25th until I watch Soul to rank it.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. I always look forward to the list. So,
Mm.
just as a basis of a comparison and just for other things to watch in the kind of like downtime that we get, right? Going into the new year.
Yeah, definitely. There's gonna be a lot of free time. So if you have time to watch 50 TV shows, or just watch the top 10, which are all pretty much must watch. You can check out my work at Popwire, which I will be sharing on the Genre Equality podcast Facebook page. So you can
Mhm.
just check for the links there. In the meantime, briefly, I've also listed my top 10 favorite films and TV shows from Asia
Yep.
on NME. That's a bit a more limited scope.
Yeah.
But the films and TV shows, from Asia are nothing to sneeze at. There's a lot of good stuff out there
You've
this
got
year as
some
well.
pretty interesting choices with that. I didn't expect Regret to go to be on there.
Yeah, I guess I mean spoiler alert. It's my number one. It's been my favorite of the enemies lah, over the past few years.
Yeah,
And Kingdom has been really fun. South Korean zombies, certainly a better, more entertaining show than Train to Busan.
I agree. I agree for sure.
Yeah.
The whole period thing, it lends a very kind of different vibe to it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a bit of zombie saturation going on. The following episode of Behold, I'll be talking about the Walking Dead's latest spin-off. I think it's the third spin-off. It's
Hmm.
it's terrible that they're beating a dead horse over there.
The comedy one.
No, not the comedy one. It's the New World. The one about
Oh,
the teens.
yeah.
It's a teen drama in the Walking Dead universe. Not great.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not surprised.
They're beating the undead horse. They just need to shoot it in the head.
Yeah.
Anyways, for Behold, there's actually no genre we'll be talking about here. More like quiet character studies.
Mm.
Two non-fiction actually. Firstly, we'll be talking about Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which is Eliza Hittman's very quiet, contemplative, emotionally precise character study
Yeah.
about a teen girl who crosses state lines to get an abortion.
Hmm.
Secondly, we'll be talking about a concert film,
Yeah.
an unusual one. It is David Byrne's American Utopia. David Byrne, of course, from Talking Heads, famously.
Yeah.
And this particular concept film is shot by Spike Lee.
Hmm.
So this is his second big movie this year besides The Five Bloods. We'll be talking about that because it's such a joyous, whimsical concert film that really makes me miss being in the crowd, being able to dance in the front row, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Finally, we'll be talking about an unusual documentary called Dick Johnson is Dead that follows a documentarian
Hmm.
whose father is ailing, dying from Alzheimer's. Basically, what she does is in this documentary, she and her father team up to stage inventive death scenes for her father. It's very
Yeah.
macabre. It's very blackly comic, very
Hmm.
bittersweet, But it's really about two people trying to deal with mortality
Yeah.
through filmmaking, through macabre humor, gallows humor,
Yeah.
which I found really interesting and weird, lah. What the most unusual documentary I've seen this year.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll begin with Eliza Hittman's Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. As I mentioned, it's an abortion movie, and like how issue movies are often fraught with editorializing and
Yeah.
speechifying. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Check out like a lot of Aaron Sorkin's work to see some of it. But
Yeah.
Never, Ready, Sometimes, Always is one of those movies where despite its hot button subject, right, it kind of transcends polemics and melodrama to offer a more emotionally precise, a more tender character study.
Hmm.
It is it's honest. It has ample empathy. It doesn't emotionally manipulate. The film trusts us to interpret the complicated predicaments of its characters, and its naturalistic dialogue light restraint is
Hmm.
quite affecting. It follows a 17-year-old girl named Autumn, played by debutant Sydney Flanagan, who is faced with an unintended pregnancy in a small Pennsylvania town.
Hmm.
She is presented from seeking an abortion by her community's pro-life women's clinics and the state's parental consent laws. Essentially, she's 17; she's too young to consent to an abortion,
Yeah.
and her homemade attempts to induce a miscarriage are quite frightening.
Mm.
Fortunately, her cousin Skylar, played by Talia Ryder, who looks like a young Grimes, with
Yeah.
whom that she works at a grocery store. She quickly figures out Autumn's secret. So she slips some bills from the cash register into her pocket. They wordlessly agree to go to New York for an abortion, so they hop on a
Hmm.
Greyhound the next morning, and this is basically a road trip movie, essentially.
Yeah.
This is your first time watching Never Ready, Sometimes Always. It did come to Singaporean cinemas via the projector or the projector plus if you want to watch it online.
Yeah.
Uh, Earlier this year, but I think you only caught it recently. So, what do you think about Never Ready, Sometimes Always?
Oh man, it is such a quiet but powerful film.
Mm,
And it's kind of like a very important snippet, right, in a teenager's life, right, given the circumstances that she's going through.
yep, yep.
The performances by Sydney Flanagan and Talia Ryder are
Mm,
amazing, right? They're just these moments of like just silence and an exchange of looks,
yeah.
and more often than not, and in addition to that, like you said, it's very dialogue, light.
Mm,
And Julia Halter's score really does kind of fill the space, right? With the same kind
yeah.
of emotional resonance. So it adds to this very like glimpses and glances and kind of like facial expressions that are meant to communicate very kind of deep, distressing emotions.
Mm-hmm,
It was very easy to be very taken by that, right? And just like the way the two of them worked out. Talia Ryder in particular, there were moments in time where she reminded me of a very young Winona Ryder.
yes, yeah.
Just in the way she kind of presented herself, and also because her character is very go interrupted,
Mm, mm,
in that sense, and I really, really kind of enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing more from these two.
mm-hmm.
Sharon Van Etten as the mother was a little strange for me.
Yeah, yeah. Weird casting.
Weird casting. Big fan of Sharon Van Etten, of course, but yeah, it kind of felt out of place. Didn't kind of feel too apt.
Yeah, yeah. But
Um,
she's only in a couple of scenes in the first act, though,
yeah,
so
that's true.
yeah.
And Ryan Eggle as Ted, who's also on. Oh my God,
Yeah,
he
he's one of those faces. Like I recognize him from a lot of
right. Oh,
things.
okay,
Yeah.
I know he's Tom Keen in Blacklist, right?
Mm,
Yeah, whose character I hated, and his character here I hate even more.
mm-hmm.
So it was just one of kind of those things. The supporting cast is sufficient, right? But it really, really is about Talia Ryder and Sydney Flanagan,
Yep.
and just like the very close bond that they share. It's more than just a friendship, right? They are family after all, but
Mm,
um it is trauma bonding, pretty
yeah.
much. And then the kind of like it's far from being an adventure for them, right? It's wandering to many unknowns at the same time, both of them,
Mm-hmm.
leaving Pennsylvania for New York, not knowing what's there, and all the kind of predicaments and things they have to face there. It's it's a very difficult movie to explain why it's so powerful unless you watch it. right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that aren't portrayed in words and therefore are also difficult to explain in words.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, yeah, very beautiful and painful and very sad movie overall.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
but
mean,
it's still enjoyable in its own kind of way, right? And I think the message that it sends is very powerful. I was reading about how they tried very hard to keep it PG-13 just so that the film could be shown to teens.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is essentially targeted towards them. I mean, it's an educational message.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it is extremely important, kind of, right? Like, above and beyond, out the John Green stuff that gets made into
Yeah.
movies and gets sold to them, like all of that, sure, all kind of like feel good. There's some serious subject matter, but like this from the get go, kind of like sets the tone, right?
Mm.
For what the message is about. Like they don't cut any corners about it. They don't take it lightly, and even as these two teams kind of grapple with the situation that they're in. At no point in time does the camera take away
Mm-hmm.
from the performance, which I think is very very important. And I'll be curious to kind of see how teens respond to it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, certainly, adult critics have responded to it very, very well. This is quite a highly rated film, and as you mentioned, this is quite a hinges upon the two lead performances,
Yeah.
which essentially are in every scene. Talia Ryder and Sydney are in every scene. They have this almost telepathic bond.
Hmm.
Between
Yeah.
the morose and introverted Autumn, and the slightly more outgoing Skylar. So that's the kind of the heart and the hope of the journey. We are presented with their lives which are not ideal even before the abortion.
Yeah.
The way that Eliza Hittman portrays the challenges before and during the trip is terrifying,
Yeah.
because they are so mundane. It's so
Hmm.
normal. You can see these things happening, from like a sexually aggressive supermarket manager, to just a pretty innocent flirtatious college kid on the bus,
Yeah.
to Autumn's more threatening, casually misogynistic father. We're kind of made to feel the pervasive anxiety caused by, I guess, unwanted male attention at every turn.
Hmm.
The fact that none of these moments feel dramatized is what makes it realistically scary lah.
Yeah.
And of course, what they assumed would be a simple one-day procedure proves to be considerably more complicated. It forces them to stay in New York for a couple of nights,
Yeah.
so they have no money, they're unable to afford a room. We follow them as they sleeplessly wander around an unfamiliar city, a famously indifferent city,
Yeah.
uncaring. They lug around this giant, huge, suitcase, which is beautifully, it's like this beautiful symbol of the burden they're both carrying,
Hmm. Hmm.
up and down subway ramps and through the streets of Manhattan. This is kind of like the odyssey of two lost children trying to navigate poorly charted territory, emotionally, logistically, and medically, which
Yeah.
is sad. Um, the title, you may be curious about what it's referring to.
Oh,
It's a reference to a counselor's clinical questions at Planned Parenthood pertaining to a patient's sexual history.
hmm
The title is explained in a truly amazing sequence, a
Oh
devastating
man.
sequence,
Yeah.
when she's asked to answer questions like, "Your partner has refused to wear a condom, never, rarely, sometimes, always. Your partner has made you have sex when you didn't want to, never, rarely, sometimes, always." So you won't forget the look on Autumn's face as her stoicism slowly cracks with each answer.
Yeah.
The audience is actually purposefully unaware of Autumn's backstory, but her responses more than hint at why she holds everyone at arm's length,
Yeah.
and why her mental survival is contingent upon compartmentalizing, her trauma lah.
Hmm.
And the first time actress, Flanagan has such a disarming way of parceling out fragments of her inner life,
Yeah.
only to quickly raise the defenses again as soon as she realizes she's doing it. She's phenomenal. That scene I was talking about, film in a single take, where she
Yeah.
has to literally break down in increments and
Hmm.
cry on cue. There's no, you can't cut during that. If you fuck up, you're gonna need to redo the take and everything. It's one of the least showy one take sequences. It's not like
Yeah.
1917 or something like that, but
Yeah.
still incredibly difficult to do from an actor standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, like watching that scene and how uncomfortable it was, and just how heartbreaking it was to kind of see her go through that just purely on her face alone, right? Because it was very unforgiving, like camera angle.
Yeah, yeah.
And then to think that it's her first time,
Mm,
right, as an actress, it really is quite, wow, it's very moving, in many many ways, and I'm just very surprised at the kind of talent that this girl has.
mm,
Yeah, I mean, neither one of these two young actresses have anything under their belt, right? Experience wise or film wise, and for them to have to grapple with such a heavy emotionally heavy topic, right,
hmm.
and have to portray that for their first kind of outing is quite crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, similarly, that Talia Ryder, co-star, like she imports, volumes of sympathy and frustration and distress simply with body language.
Hmm.
There is an unadorned style to Hitman's filmmaking, that
Yeah.
favors intense close-ups, and she kind of plunges viewers into the subjectivity of a protagonist with, who has this jumble of feelings. They have dread and confusion, determination and resignation, and
Hmm.
it all plays out with, subtle glances. There's a squeeze of a hand or a minute spent applying, like each other's makeup in a bathroom. They're able to like speechlessly convey, not just reactive emotions, but complex decisions, explanations, and assurances.
Hmm.
I think better than pages of dialogue could
Yeah.
achieve.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Just so
Uh,
taken by that.
yeah. Any closing thoughts about Never Really, Sometimes Always?
Again, highly recommended on our side. We wouldn't be talking about it, as one of the. It is one of the most different films that I've seen this year. I think,
Mm.
as far as like the serious issue movies that we've talked about, right?
Yep. Yep.
This one is quietly powerful, and that's saying a lot. Um,
Yeah.
just in terms of the way that it's portrayed and what it's talking about, because it feels very real and very in the moment. There's nothing showy about it, and
Mhm.
it's powerful because of that. So highly encourage anybody who's kind of interested in something different when it talks when it comes to the topic of like abortion and teenage pregnancy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for my end, I love that it isn't interested in delivering some sort of ham-fisted message about, the trials of teen pregnancy, or the government threats to overturn right to choose legislation. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It's just a very like real story about, these two young women and their, excruciatingly accurate ordeal. It
Hmm.
doesn't moralize. It doesn't exaggerate. I think it simply shows the insane number of hoops they have to jump through in order to have autonomy.
Yeah.
Uh, there are no unnecessary details given. Even the father is never mentioned.
Yeah.
And it honors the gravity of Autumn's experience without sensationalizing it, which I think a lot of movies will have a temptation to do, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it will have you feeling and weeping for all the autumns of the world, and and in all of the endurance without really sensationalizing it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, love this film. One of my favorites of the year.
Definitely. Please go check it out.
Yeah.
Can people find it?
It's available everywhere on VOD, any platform you want. But I would encourage you to go support the Projector if you are living in Singapore, of course.
Hmm. Yeah.
The Projector is a local boutique cinema. Obviously, all cinemas are suffering from COVID-19, but the smaller cinemas are having a harder time of it, lah.
Yeah.
And it's available to watch, at the Projector itself, or you can rent it on Projector Plus, which is their online streaming platform. You can buy it for I think $10 or something, and you can keep it for 2 days, watch it over 2 days. So yeah, that's where you can watch it. Next up,
Yep.
we have David Byrne's American Utopia. If you don't know, David Byrne, of course, from Talking Heads,
Yeah.
famously, the former frontman of that famous band. He had a Broadway show called American Utopia, very acclaimed, actually. And they recently, not recently, they filmed it, I think a year or two ago. Spike Lee did,
Yep.
and he brings this kind of one of a kind Broadway show into a one of a kind concert film. It was recorded during its run at Broadway's Hudson Theater in
Hmm.
New York City, of course.
Yeah.
David Byrne is joined by an ensemble of 11 musicians, singers, and dancers from all around the world, and it kind of invites audiences into a song-filled journey. It really is a concert. It's song to song to song,
Hmm.
but it presents it in a utopian dream world where human connection and self-evolution and social justice are
Yeah.
paramount. Very very full of love and hope and brightness. Really enjoy David Byrne's American Utopia. One of my favorite concert films ever, actually.
Yeah.
Brilliantly done. What do you think about American Utopia?
Uh, I love David Byrne. Love what he's done, especially post Talking Heads. He's done some fairly interesting things. I think his collaboration with Saint Vincent was one of my favorite from the last
Mm,
couple of years.
solo work is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoyed American Utopia. There's just something incredibly celebratory about it, right, and very
Yeah.
triumphant about it. Even though it presents obviously a very kind of like idealized world, and I mean, it's in the title, right?
Yeah.
But even then, um it doesn't shy away from what it is, right? Like he leans into the entire idea that yes, this is a utopia. This is what it should be like. Or this is what it could be like, right? And the music, from the way that it's presented, from the way that it sounds, and just the tone and the vibe of the entire concert itself, right? It is one huge kind of celebration,
Mm,
right? And it goes from just these like kind of quiet moments, just soft riffs and all of that, into a cacophony of sounds, and it's quite a journey overall.
mm-hmm.
I think the setting within the theater itself, of course, it's a Broadway show that was filmed. It just felt interesting and very apt, right?
Mm-hmm.
As kind of we've explored a number of films, set within, or rather, movies that are um,
Film on
are
stage.
filmed on stage, right?
Yeah.
This year, and it was kind of interesting to revisit that. We did kind of Pina, and then we did Hamilton, and all
Yeah.
of that,
The West Wing also.
and the West Wing as well. I mean,
Yeah.
but to see like a true like blue blood concert film,
Mm-hmm.
and done by Spike Lee, no less, right? Was really quite a treat. I feel like the space itself was used in a very interesting way. I really wish I could have caught it in person,
Yeah,
uh,
same. Yeah.
because I mean, like there is an energy that comes through the screen that you can feel very palpably, and I can only imagine what it's like sitting in one of those seats.
Not that
Uh,
anybody was sitting, mind you. Everybody was standing throughout everything.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
David Byrne. Like, it's kind of hard to sit,
Yeah.
while his music is playing. It is so strange. At the same time, right? Like just kind of like the subject matter in it, that they are singing about, and kind of at moments kind of talking about, and explaining.
Yeah.
There are moments in time when he goes into these monologues that feel almost like a TED talk,
Yeah.
but they never feel out of place, despite the fact that this spectacle of American Utopia is odd in the timeline that we're living in, right?
Yeah.
So overall, like, I mean, the costumes are sharp, the movement is sharp,
Mm.
just like the choices in terms of how they stage everything and plot everything. The energy is insane and through the roof, and always just a bit more than you expect it to be.
Mm.
And it's a riot. It really is, and it is a riot that's kind of like celebrating what the best of humanity could possibly be.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think I've sorely needed to see this year,
Yeah.
and I think others might as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a year kind of defined by a lot of tragedy, a lot of isolation,
Hmm.
a lot of division, a lot of cynicism. American Utopia is precisely the kind of concert film that we need. Not just because we can't go to concerts, but because of the concerts and songs themes.
Yeah,
American Utopia, it doesn't have a plot. I have to emphasize that again.
yeah,
It's an hour 45 minutes of burn and talking hit songs, plus something that's not quite stage banter and not quite a monologue.
yeah.
It expresses the essence of I guess this moment in the world. The fraying and disillusion of community and understanding. And it begins with him holding a giant plastic brain right after the song here,
Yeah.
and explaining how scientists have discovered that infant minds are brimming with connective pathways which disappear as they get older.
Hmm.
I think the show is an effort to beat a drum and get back those pathways.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a crafty production, exciting. I love the costuming, love this. I mean, the dancing seems simple, the choreography seems simple, but not really.
No, no, no.
Yeah, it's very complex. Even the the keyboard players and percussionists are not sitting down.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
wearing harnesses, and they're traveling all around the stage and dancing with the instruments. The stage has beaded curtains on three sides with lights. And of course the camera emerging from behind them. It's such a great setup. And
Yeah.
Byrne is clearly the star of the show, but I have to give credit to everyone else on stage with him. I think everyone has a different kind of charisma and fierceness.
Mhm.
I really like the guy who plays the woman who plays the congos.
Oh yeah.
Such a radiance. All of them are great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just take a moment to kind of geek out from like the technical point of view, it just
Mm,
it's quite a technical feat because every single instrument that's on stage is a wireless instrument, right? And in order to have everybody moving at the same time and all of that, like it takes a fair bit of coordination. Like
yeah.
individual skill is required as a musician to be choreographed. And like playing the keyboard in particular, I'm just like, wow, how do you like how
Mm,
and it's one of those things that you as someone who has performed on stage and knows how difficult it'd be to move while you're trying to play music.
yeah.
um it's something to marvel at, right? Both on a technical level and just like on a skill level. So like
Yeah.
that just is icing on top of the cake, on top of everything else for me.
Man, singing and dancing is already very difficult.
Yeah.
You add in instruments to that. Oh my gosh, the multitasking. Yeah, and yet despite all this, they never miss a beat.
Mhm.
They don't fuck up. There are no botches.
Yeah.
It's such an explosion of unconventional energy and unconventional choreography. Bren, literally, he kind of, he does. It feels like he's sprinting here, like, and as does everyone. I can see the sweat,
Yeah.
and all the effort being put in. It's so great, and I love the musical choices too. I mean, obviously, I popped a lot for the classic talking head
Hmm.
songs.
Hmm. Yeah.
Burning Down the House, Once in a Lifetime, that kind of stuff. There's also some deep cuts. One of his collabs with Brian Eno,
Yeah.
and of course some of the titular album, La American Utopia. Yeah, like, well, were your favorite songs from it?
Oh, my favorite song was the Janelle Monáe cover from
Mm,
Electric Lady. I did not expect it to be like that. So it kind of caught me by surprise when the riff came in. I'm just like, oh, really? Is that where we're
mm,
going? Yeah, but I mean, like the classics for sure. I'm actually not altogether familiar with the titular album, the title album itself.
mm.
But I'm definitely the moment I was done with the film, I put it on my Spotify to listen list. So I'm gonna be going from that. Of course, Love This Giant, which is his collaboration with Saint Vincent. I Should Watch TV was one of my favorites as well.
Yep.
Just when the horns come in, right? I'm just like, wow, I love that. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and probably Toe Jam. I think I'm not really sure where it's from. So I'm gonna need to kind of look that up, but that is like in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. I have to give credit, of course, to the director, Spike Lee.
Hmm.
I think his camera work, he constantly finds new and exciting angles on
Yeah,
the action.
yeah.
The cinematography by Alan Kuras is really great. Sometimes they go overhead, sometimes they go
Mm,
underneath, sometimes they go behind, half an inch from their faces. And yet we never get a glimpse of the camera, even though there are 11 operators involved.
yeah.
The set is spare but is stylish.
Mm,
The shimmering metallic curtains are great. The silver gray suits are great. It's such a great Broadway show, and it's brought to the screen with such remarkable, quirky energy
yeah.
by Spike Lee. Few, I think, I don't think like Hamilton. I loved Hamilton, mind you,
Yeah.
but I don't think the filmed version of Hamilton truly captures the real Hamilton experience.
No, I don't think so. I don't think
But
so.
I think the film version of American Utopia, probably not, but I think it comes closer.
Yeah, I think there's something a lot more synergistic with the way Spike Lee and Ellen Kuras decided to film it.
Hmm.
Like their choices feel more synergistic with the music and with the performance than what we got in Hamilton.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Clearly this film was not supposed to come out during a pandemic. Like, they never, who plans for a pandemic, right? But it
Yeah,
turns out, to be the perfect pandemic thing to watch at home on HBO, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, like best for me this year, like one of the best music things in general for the year, hands down.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. Whether it's audio visual or whether it's just audio, this is great. So, I was standing for. I mean, around the midpoint of the concert, it becomes so energetic that
Yeah,
you just can't sit down. It's
yeah, yeah.
it's such a bop. Like everything's a bop.
Yeah, I was moving around my room as well. I was watching it privately, of course. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was fun. It was infectious. Like you really, really can't not participate, even as you watch this on a screen, right? Which I think is testament to just how good it
Mm-hmm.
is. And in addition to that, it is also a testament to kind of like conceptually and thematically what Byrne is trying to push here, right? Like it's not so much like
Yes.
joy and sadness, but the whole idea of connection, right? And to be
Yeah.
able to do that through a screen,
Mm.
that's really quite something.
I mean, Byrne is 68 years old.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel 68 at all. He performs with an an energy and exuberance that I remember him from the 60s. And I mean,
Hmm.
of course, I wasn't alive in the 60s and 70s, but I've seen videos of him back
Yep.
then. It
Yep.
looks like he hasn't missed a step at all.
No, no. And there are moments in time when they do really, really close ups of his face, and you
Yeah,
can see the age on his face.
of
But
course.
when
Yeah,
they
yeah,
zoom
yeah.
out and he's moving and he's just jiving and stuff like that, like you wouldn't imagine the man's almost 70.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, He's almost 70. He's going to be there in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we are able to travel again or whatever, like American Utopia, Hadestown, and Hamilton are like the three big
Oh
things
my god.
I've been wanting to watch, and I
Yeah.
hope I get to whenever the COVID vaccines come in.
Yeah, for sure. Like Hades Town is number one on my list for sure.
Yeah, and if you want to watch Spike Lee's American Utopia, you
Hmm.
can.
Yep.
It is available on, if you're in America, HBO Max. HBO Max is everything these days. It's also available on regular HBO,
Hmm.
HBO Go, HBO Now, things like that. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's highly recommended.
Yep.
As a brief side note, like, have you watched concert films that are this good before? And if so, what are they?
Concert films that are this good? No, I don't think I have. I don't know if where do we draw the line though? Where something is a concert film as opposed to like a live performance that's filmed.
I suppose like something like Dave Chappelle's Block Party from
Yeah.
2000.
Okay.
It's a
Okay.
concert film. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Wow. If we were gonna bring in Block Party, I mean Block Party ranks up there, but definitely American Utopia for sure.
Yeah.
I don't. I nothing immediately kind of comes to mind. There have been a couple of like really fascinating Nine Inch Nails live performances that were streamed that
Mm-hmm.
I think come pretty close in terms of like the art direction and the videography in general. I hesitate to call it cinematography necessarily
Mm-hmm.
because I don't really think that's it. But no, nothing comes close to American Utopia. How about for you? Like, do you anything that this kind of reminds you of, or you're using it in comparison to?
Uh, in terms of concert films, I think Dave Chappelle's Block Party probably one of the best ever.
Yep.
There is let's see. I think there's a film last year, right, called Amazing Grace.
Right.
Yeah.
Um. Yes, I actually watched that. Wait, let's just pull that up real
it's
quick.
it's it's the Aretha Franklin lost concert. She
Yeah.
performed in
Yeah.
a gospel performance back in 1972.
Yeah.
They never they the footage got lost somehow, and then it was finally recovered like decades later. Such a raw, powerful, in the
Mm,
moment thing, capturing an artist that was not a legend yet, but in her prime at that time.
yeah.
Delivering like one of her most soulful performances. That is the thing that I think comes closest to American
Yeah,
Utopia in
for
terms of
sure,
concert
for
films.
sure. It's the Sydney Pollack one from 2 years ago. I watched that at
Yes,
projector actually.
yeah, projector, yeah,
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I mean, Aretha is, she is her own like whole thing. So,
yeah,
powerhouse stuff. Yeah, definitely, definitely ranks up there. A Block Party definitely ranks up there. I mean,
yeah,
that
yeah.
was one.
It's a
Um,
weird genre that isn't really that popular, but once in a while there is some gems here.
I'm curious as to the way things are going now. Sure, we've got vaccines on the horizon and things like that, but I think generally, given how media consumers have changed their consumption patterns, right? Whether or not we'll see more of these,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, with so many musicians kind of like taking to streaming and taking to more like recorded shows and stuff like that, whether
Yeah.
or not concert films will be not a mainstay, but will be more frequent. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I for one, wouldn't mind if we are still stuck indoors a year or two from now. More concert films would be great.
Yeah.
I've run out of tiny desks to watch. So
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
why not, right?
Kind of exhausted
Uh,
that in color studios. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Anyways, next up, we're moving to more nonfiction, I guess.
Hmm.
This one is on Netflix. It is a documentary film from a filmmaker called Christine Johnson. She's been a documentarian all her life. She spent her life, making documentaries, and it has convinced her that documentaries offer this power of insight into shaping how you think about the real, or shaping reality itself.
Yep.
Now she's going to use every escapist movie making trick in the book, by staging inventive and fantastical ways for her 86-year-old psychiatrist father to die.
Yeah.
He is suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia. He's on his last legs, probably. These are his final days.
Yeah.
But while he's still lucid, while he still has a sense of humor, he and his daughter are participating in this unusual project where they are staging various ways for him to die, hoping that cinema might help them bend time, laugh at the pain,
Yeah.
and for Kristen to keep her father alive forever, at least through the lens, through this film.
Hmm.
What do you think about such an unusual documentary such as Dick Johnson is Dead? What a premise.
Yeah. The conceit of the film itself is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And I think the way that it starts with the title sequence and just the very short explanation that they give in the beginning, uh,
Yeah.
it kind of like sets a very interesting tone that belies how deep this film actually is in terms of its exploration of mortality,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like anticipating grief, which is such a rarely explored thing.
Yeah.
But like they do it with so much grace and with so much
Mm-hmm.
humor and with so
Mm-hmm.
much like there are moments in time where it's just so absurd and so funny,
Yeah.
that you often forget what the film is actually supposed to be about.
Mm-hmm.
But of course we always get drawn back into that with much more kind of like serious real life moments in between everything.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I when I first read what it was about, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did.
Yeah.
Just because like the highs are really high, the lows are pretty low.
Mm.
And there is so much to kind of grapple with. And the way that it's kind of packaged that you is heartwarming and uplifting in the end, right?
Yes.
Despite
Yeah.
its subject matter, and despite the things that it discusses. And I think because of that, the film itself is a triumph of it is such a beautiful love letter to her father,
Mm.
um that I mean, like I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, right, at the end of the whole thing, right, because
Mm-hmm.
she successfully portrays her father and all his greatness, right, as she remembers it and as she's lived it, in this beautiful little package of a film.
Yeah.
And yeah, I loved it. It really took me by surprise, and I left watching the film like feeling better about life and better about like confronting my own mortality and the mortality of my loved ones.
Yeah, of course. It's oddly poignant, and sneakily provocative movie.
Yeah.
Some of the death scenes that she stages for her father are clearly fantastical. He trips down the stairs, an air conditioner falls on his head while
Yeah.
walking on the street. A construction mishap involving a plank. She trips on a curb. There's blood and twisted limbs and a cringing thud of a body hitting concrete. And somehow through all of this, like gallows humor. There is laughter. There
Yeah.
is joy in a father and daughter working together to pull something this blackly comic off. It's insane. But at the same time, also the doc does clearly show that the elderly Johnson is clearly deteriorating from
Yeah.
his dementia.
Yeah.
Um, these things might happen in the real world. They're jokes, sure, but he's already kind of begun to make dangerous errors, right? Like for example, he drove through a construction site,
Hmm.
making his way home on four flat tires, that kind of thing. It's no mistake that the stage deaths here are all freak accidents. It's like silent comedy whimsies and gags that tilt away from morbidness and violence towards cartoonish hilarity.
Yeah.
So like watching them reset and restage these accidents, it's like watching like a supercut of like a road runner, dropping anvils and things like that. What a killer premise, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also easy to imagine a version of this, because when I first read the premise, like I thought it would mostly coast on the cleverness of it,
Yeah. Hmm.
but it doesn't. There's a lot of realism in here as well. There's a lot of poignancy, there's a lot of heartbreak. Yeah, I mean, it's so beautiful, and it's also so sad and also comforting in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's
It's
it's disarming lah.
it is the most interesting documentary I've seen this year,
Yeah,
easily. Right.
yeah.
The the premise is clever. It's unusual. It will bait you into that, and then it will deliver all sorts of feels, and all sorts of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, how can you not recommend something like that, right? Like, with just again, right, where we are today in the world, right, with what's going on and how many lives have kind of been lost.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for a father and daughter to write a love letter to each other at the very end of his days, right, is just it's beautiful to think about. But the way in which they go about it is beautiful to watch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Dick Johnson is that. I think it suggests that learning to confront reminders of death,
Yeah.
and to even conjure them for yourself, and examine them closely,
Hmm.
it takes some of the sting out of death and it replaces it with love.
Yeah.
To love someone is to accept that one day death will be the thing that parts both of you.
Yeah.
The pain of knowing that is built into the act of loving, uh, and the way that Kristen Johnson does her loving is by the only thing that she knows how to do.
Yeah.
Documentary filmmaking.
Hmm. Hmm.
This is a funny film about death and a wrenching film about life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
it's
That's
kind of
a
a
very, very accurate way of putting it. Hmm.
it's celebratory. It's also an elegy. It's elegiac. It's
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a serious documentary, but it has light surrealistic flourishes that
Yeah.
shine and veer into exuberant goofiness sometimes.
Yeah.
It has one hell of a false ending that I'm not going to give away.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so sad, but also touching and funny. The Johnsons are actually, I mean, as sad as the situation is, they are very fortunate that they have this type of father and daughter relationship.
Hmm.
Where they
Yeah.
can make something like this, and maybe one day when Nick Johnson finally does pass away, this will be the one thing that she can watch and bring back good memories of him, not bad memories of his
Yeah.
death, but good memories of his life.
Hmm.
And how his father is, has such a great sense of humor, and how he approached his impending peril.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, because he agrees knowing where he's gonna go, right? Like how he's gonna go out.
Yeah.
And then, like, despite the fact that throughout the film, and and the filming process itself as they're documenting it, you can see that deterioration. Like, they don't shy away from capturing that or even
Mhm.
talking about it, right? But he's still in his moments of lucidity, right?
Mm.
Continues to be amazing, and humorous and funny and loving and kind. It
Such a,
really
such
is.
a, such a good guy, huh?
Yeah, it's so amazing. Like, it
Yeah.
almost feels like it's not it's fiction, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's part of his character. And then you realize that that's nothing to kind of do with it, because, like, you see it when he's kind of like not there, right? Like, there's a vacant look in his eyes and all that. They're kind of losing him, and
Hmm.
Kristen has to walk off of camera just to compose herself. And but those moments of lucidity, right, feel so real and so true that it feels unreal. You get what I mean? Like, there's a
Yeah.
purity to his character in late stage dementia that comes true, in the slightly more quiet and real moments of the film itself. And that's just crazy to me,
Yeah.
how she managed to capture that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way that she captures Dick, especially her father, is
Yeah.
so kind and loving. Like when he is lucid, his eyes sparkle.
Mm.
He takes everything thrown at him with good humor. Things
Yeah.
that would insult me, actually, to be honest, or make me uncomfortable. He takes it with a pinch of salt. He's so full of life.
Yeah.
Even with a body that is visibly breaking down, he is
Hmm.
so full of life. Every time a stuntman falls down or takes a hit for him, he yells as though he's taking the hit for himself.
Yeah.
He has such a bright laughter that punctuates every apparent death.
Yeah.
Shots of him falling asleep on set or joking about the excessive amount of chocolate cake that may or may not have led to his heart attack a few
Yeah.
decades ago. It ensures the audience would have an idea of his personality and love him at least a fraction of as much that Kristen clearly does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, on the simplest level, Dick Johnson is clearly a tribute to a father, but it's also a very, very public reckoning with grief, uh,
Mm.
and a way, and a way for her to spend more time with her father while she still has the chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watching the two of them play with death may not ultimately make it easier to cope with death,
Hmm.
but the scenes where they pretend he's dead feel full of life. They are exaggerated and colorful,
Yeah.
especially when Dick goes to heaven,
Oh my God.
has a few wishes granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so palpable and full of love. Yeah, it's such a great tribute to a really kind man, and shows how skilled of a storyteller Kristen is.
Hmm.
It's
Absolutely.
an extraordinary work because how easily Kristen, the documentarian, slips between tones without coming off as saccharine
Yeah.
or untruthful.
Hmm.
The film's focal point is obviously very difficult for her personally. I mean, I can only imagine, right?
Yeah.
But her voice never breaks the narration. That's a feat in of itself.
Hmm.
But the heartbreak the film invokes is bearable because the documentation of it is so earnest. It's a great reminder to cherish your loved ones while they're still living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
take that extra photo, take a video, hang on to something.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell your loved ones that you love them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I mean, Dick Johnson is that. Just for anyone who has thought about, dying and your mortal life and your loved one's mortal life, I think like it's an important film to watch, right? It's universal.
Yeah,
The kind of like levity that it brings and it confronts is probably one of the best I've seen, right? Like in my lifetime at least, you know.
yeah, 100% agree, and definitely one of the best non-fiction of the year.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, highly recommend.
Highly recommend, man. Yeah. Yeah. And that caps it off for three of the films that we were able to talk about. There are a lot of, obviously a lot of other great films out there this
Yep.
year. And maybe in January we'll wrap up with like some honorable mentions or whatnot.
Yeah.
And again, there's some things that I said just couldn't watch because it's just some things that like only I can watch because I have access to it because I'm a
Hmm.
critic, things
Yeah.
like that. Or other things that are more recent, like Mank, David Fincher's most
Oh
recent
yeah.
film, and
Mhm.
things like that. Really good. I haven't really decided what's my number one of the year yet. I have a
Yeah.
feeling it's Nomadland,
Okay. Okay.
but
So
not
still
sure
holding
yet.
strong. All right. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, looking forward to seeing what both your lists are going to be like,
Hmm.
and of course catching up on all of those, and maybe for some again, like for Nomadland and Mank and stuff like that, I think we might just dedicate an episode to talking about those.
Definitely. Yeah.
Like seeing already the reviews that are coming out, I'm pretty
Mm.
interested. I'm sure we have quite a bit to discuss.
Yeah. For my top 50 TV, I have to tell you, like my 40 to 50 has been reshuffled like an insane amount of
Oh,
times.
I can only imagine. Is there will there be any late additions to that list?
Late additions.
Because it doesn't look like the schedule for the rest of the year is very, yeah, it doesn't look that like there's much.
Late editions, I think relatively late. Small X is a late edition.
Okay, okay.
The Mandalorian crept into the very bottom of the list, and that's quite a late edition as well.
Yeah,
Being a November December show.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And of course, we'll get into that for the next genre equality.
Yes, let's talk about what's coming up in 2 weeks' time for
Hmm.
genre equality. We probably have our biggest show for a while.
Hmm.
There's so many big topics to talk about. There is a lot of Pedro Pascal. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
We have Pedro Pascal in a Pascal mask and Pedro Pascal playing an 80s billionaire in The Mandalorian.
Yep.
and Wonder Woman 84, where Pedro Pascal plays the main villain.
Hmm.
I do have to say, uh, both are great. I really enjoyed The Mandalorian. Still enjoy Mandalorian, of course. If you
Yep.
haven't seen
Yep.
the finale, Wonder
Yeah.
Woman 1984. I have a lot of issues with it.
Uh
It
huh.
is very long. There's so many problems narratively.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, like, kind of a spoiler alert. Like, subjectively, I'm probably only gonna give it like a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
no. Objectively, I'm gonna give it a six
Objectively.
or seven. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm gonna tell you, subjectively, this is not an official rating. Subjectively, I fucking loved it. It's like
Yeah.
a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, personal. It
Yeah.
hits all the right notes.
Oh, that's. I mean, that's totally fine. I think. What we've been doing this for two ish 2.5 years now, right? Like there
Yeah.
are plenty of times where we're just like, yeah, it's like a 5 or a 6, but I fucking love it, And I
Yeah.
think Hardy in particular, like had a lot of those moments,
Mm.
So I mean, I totally understand, and I mean, I haven't watched it yet.
Mm.
I'm dying to watch it and just kind of see what it's all about. But
When you watch it, you'll see a lot of the flaws, lah, and there's a lot to
Mhm.
talk about. But I just like the tone so much.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Richard Donner's Superman. Back
Oh
in the day.
wow!
Yeah.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. That gets me excited. That gets me excited. I will give it a fair shot,
Yeah.
right? I think it's probably one of the big the one of the blockbusters that I've looked forward to for the majority of the year. So
Hmm.
we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll also be reviewing. Of course, we mentioned Pixar's Soul,
Hmm.
about the jazz pianist who goes to the afterlife. O- Everything Pixar does is a winner.
Yeah.
And Soul looks to be like the next Coco. I guess that the Black Coco, for example. There's also the hand drawn. I might add, masterpiece Wolfwalkers,
Yeah.
coming out of Ireland production studio. What's it called? Cartoon Saloon.
Hmm.
It is amazing. It's just a marvel to look at. Probably, I think my favorite animated film of the year.
Wow. Okay.
We'll be reviewing also Big Mouth. Season 4 is just out. Still
Hmm.
obscene, but still insightful. Hilda is back after 2 years.
Yes.
It's been a long time.
Very excited.
We'll be talking about George. Well, at least I will be talking about George Clooney's new movie, The Midnight Sky.
Hmm.
As I mentioned, the new Walking Dead spin-off. There's a Taiwanese movie called Detention. It's a new superhero movie called Arch Enemy, starring Joe Manganiello.
Oh.
Alice in Borderland is here.
Hmm.
Monster Hunter. From Gosh,
Oh my god. Yeah.
we'll talk about the Chinese controversy in Monster Hunter. Because I think that's more interesting to talk about than the actual film itself, which is
Yeah, yeah,
flat out terrible.
and
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, all the fanboys from the gaming side, right? Like Monster Hunter game fans are
yeah,
just like, what have you done with this franchise? So yeah, we'll
yeah.
talk more about that for sure.
Yeah, Paul W.S. Anderson, who also made Mortal Kombat and Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat Annihilation and the Resident Evil movies, clearly the king of shitty video game adaptations.
yeah.
He has one-upped himself here by making an even shittier one called Monster Hunter. We'll talk about that.
Ah,
Yeah, those are our big on-screen ones. I'll be talking about a new novel by Susanna Clarke, who comes
mhm.
back after 17 years for her new novel Piranesi. She wrote
Damn.
uh, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell,
Yeah,
my favorite fantasy novel of all time. She has been sick with I think Lyme disease,
yeah.
chronic fatigueness. So
Hmm.
she's been bedridden for over a decade,
Yeah,
but she's been finding time here and there whenever she has strength for over an hour or two a day. She wrote this book, and this book has been 16 years in the making. I'm gonna tell you, it's worth it.
that's
Yeah,
great.
and
Yeah,
that's what we'll be talking about on the upcoming genre equality. Excited! It's one of our biggest shows.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It's great to be going into the new year with so many good things.
Yeah. By the way, The Expanse is back.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't know if we should be talking about this right now. I guess we have a bit of time. So
Yeah.
apparently, it's not canceled.
No, no. They were given
They,
season 5 and 6 to wrap it up.
yeah, yeah.
It's not
But it,
technically a cancellation.
yeah. So apparently, because like one of the I can't remember if it was the writer, or the showrunner who was saying that, oh, we might have something more after that. I was like, really?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I love The Expanse. For those of you who have followed us for a while, that's one of our favorite sci-fi shows of recent
Yeah.
time. Yeah, really interesting. I mean, okay, this is going to be the home stretch, right? And
Mm.
so many of our favorite big franchises, fantasy, sci-fi, or otherwise, have fallen flat in the home stretch. So I've got my fingers crossed that it doesn't like Game of Thrones doesn't happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping the showrunners know what they're kind of like up against and what the The bar is very low, guys. Don't fuck up. Yeah, that's all. That's my wishes for the Expanse over the next 2 seasons.
Yeah, but at the same time, this year has given us, great finales like The Good Place and
That's
BoJack
true.
Horseman,
That's true.
and
Yeah.
things like that. Hopefully, the Expanse will continue in more in that direction. Now, of course,
Mm.
and I have a feeling. I mean, I don't have any news or anything. I have a feeling it's going to go down the Firefly route and
Oh.
actually culminate with a feature film, which would wrap up,
Oh.
the thing, lah.
Yeah. 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 I would love to see that.
Yeah,
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. There's still.
an actual big screen movie. It's a possibility. And Amazon does have a lot of money, but the thing is that the Expanse fan base is not big enough to justify this. I know
Yeah.
they're not I know they're not calling it a cancellation, but essentially it is a
Yeah.
cancellation.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I don't know. Do
Like
you
how many
think?
times can be saved, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Like it's a few times too many. Right. Like it's like a real life Deus Ex.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that if they made a full feature film for The Expanse, right, would it have the same effect as Serenity did for Firefly?
I don't know.
Because there
I
are
don't know
a fair number of fans who caught
who came into
Serenity
Serenity. Yeah,
and they're just like, "What is this? I want more of this. What is this?" Right?
Serenity fairly
Mhm.
has less backstory to cover, so it also functioned as another pilot.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Serenity the film can be watched standalone.
yeah.
The Expanse the film, I have a feeling cannot because there's too much history and backstory already.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
Like Jaws could sum up one season's worth of story in passing bits of dialogue.
Yeah.
You cannot sum up 6 seasons worth of story in passing bits of
No.
dialogue.
No. Not
Yeah.
in the least bit. There's just way too much dialogue to be covered. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, anyways, we'll get into the Expense in January, which is a very bare month. We only have a couple of titles to cover, which is Expense and another space show, Star Trek Discovery.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a couple of months from now. We'll figure out our January schedule later on with Behold and John and
Mhm,
Forty. We
mhm.
haven't thought about that yet. Still, blundering through the end of the year and making all my end of year lists and
Yep.
stuff like that. Yeah. Once I get that sorted, then I'll think about January.
Yeah, yeah. We'll take it as it comes. We'll take it as it
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, till next time, this has been Hitzer.
Isa.
For more genre talk, tune in 2 weeks for genre quality. Goodbye, guys.
Ciao.